My name is John Koenig, and I'm a hypnotist. I work with people who want to make important personal changes, quitting smoking, changing other habits, overeating, um, alcohol problems, as well as things like sports enhancement, sports improvement, past life regression, pain management. Anytime one person wants to change the way they think, act, or feel, hypnosis can be useful. But I'm talking today about quitting habits, habits that are destructive to you. It might be smoking, might be alcohol use, other drugs, might be food. It could be a behavior problem like gambling, um, sex problems, over shopping, anything that you want, even something like managing your anger. Anytime you want to change behavior, I call it the zone defense plan. The term zone defense plan comes from sports. In sports like basketball, lacrosse, I believe, soccer, individual players have responsibilities for a zone that they protect. By breaking the recovery process down into zones, places where you're going to be watching yourself, the process of staying free becomes easier. This comes from my work with addicts in many, many varieties of addictions, and it's proven over years. I think you're going to find it very helpful. It's also color coded to make it even simpler. The first zone is what I call the green zone. Now, the green zone is where you want to be. If you've quit smoking, you want to be looking at the benefits of quitting. You want to be comfortable. You want to be living in the day. You want to be avoiding situations that are going to cause you triggers. You're going to want to be pretty much at peace within yourself. You're a non-smoker now. If it's quitting a behavior thing like gambling, you just you don't even think about it. You recoil from gambling like from a hot flame. And it applies to if it's anger, you want to be watching yourself. You want to be at peace within yourself. You don't want to be snapping at kids or people in the supermarket line. And so it's a nice place to be. That's why I chose the color green. And if you've worked with me, you've begun probably to associate green with rebirth, with spring, with happiness, with health, all those wonderful things. So the green zone is where you want to be. And to stay in the green zone, you need to be aware of some other zones that can cause you trouble. The first of these is what I call the yellow zone. Now, yellow zone, I picked this color because this is pretty bright yellow, but yellow is amber. The yellow on the traffic light that says caution. Now, the yellow zone is a place. It can be a place. It can also be a time, or it can be circumstances that are what people call triggering. For example, if you are a smoker or were a smoker and you're used to smoking or were used to smoking after dinner, for example, after dinner becomes a yellow zone, a time where you have to be vigilant. There's a line in 12-step recovery that constant vigilance is the price of sobriety. I believe constant vigilance is the price of getting free of any problematic habitual behavior, which could simply be, shopping addiction. You might find yourself sitting in front of the Home Shopping Network at night alone when your spouse isn't around with your credit card watching. Well, alone watching television without your spouse becomes a yellow zone, a time to be aware. Another yellow zone story might be if you are an overeater and there are certain aisles in the supermarket that you really shouldn't be going down. So that's a geographical yellow zone. And a yellow zone might be a person. You might know that you had a particular smoking buddy, and at work they would come and say, "You want to go out for a cigarette?" That person and them asking you that is a yellow zone, a time to be alert. Constant vigilance being the price of freedom once you pick up one of these habits. Now, a yellow zone for a drinker, if you're early in sobriety, particularly, and you're invited to a wedding where there's going to be champagne toast, where there's going to be an open bar. That whole wedding experience becomes a yellow zone. And by being aware of times when you're vulnerable, I'll also mention an acronym that comes from 12-step recovery for alcohol. HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And I would add an S, and I would say sad or stressed. When you're hungry or you're angry or you're lonely or you're physically tired or you're stressed or sad, these are times, yellow zone, where you have to be alert. Because remember, you've committed before you started this process. If you were a smoker, you decided it is absolutely essential for you to stop smoking for your health, for your family, for your well-being. If you are a gambler who's got yourself into horrific gambling problems, it's essential because you know you can't go once. I had a gambling client and had done very well, was a major gambler, and went into a convenience store, not realizing that convenience store for her, it was going to be a yellow zone, and bought one little raffle ticket, one of the Powerballs. How could one little ticket get her in trouble? Well, it turns out that that became a yellow zone. That convenience store, going in there, I had to be aware when she's standing at the counter looking at the display of scratch tickets that whole area is a yellow zone. And it's not rocket science. It's knowing and telling yourself the truth about those times when you are going to be vulnerable and being particularly vigilant during those times. And one of the ways to deal with the yellow zone is to get out of it. Absolutely get out of it. I had a client once and had quit drinking alcohol, was doing great, and goes into a work event. And the boss turns a new account, turns to everybody and says, I want everybody to have a drink to toast the new account. And looked directly at my client. And what did she do? She got out of the room. If your recovery, your freedom is very, very important to you, the most important thing perhaps even, you're going to pay attention to yellow zone. Other people call it triggers, to be aware of where they are, when they are. It can be times of day. It can be circumstance, like you're alone. Oftentimes, for people new in recovery, say, from opiates. I've known people who, having money, having more than $10 in their pocket, became a yellow zone. It was a temptation. I got money. What's the next thing to do? You got the idea. So think for a little bit after you watch this little program about what your yellow zones are, and know that those times, because you're committed to staying free, right? You want to be particularly vigilant. That's the yellow zone. Now, the next zone is the orange zone. Now, the yellow zone can be a geographical place. It can be a time of day. It can be certain people. The orange zone is the state of mind. This is a dangerous place. It's a thought. Before you go back on your decision to be free, or anyone, from behavior, you have to tell yourself something. You have to give yourself a story. I'll give you an orange zone story. Woman, crack cocaine addict, and she was doing really well for a week or so. And she's driving along, and she goes into a yellow zone. She goes into a part of my city where you can buy drugs on the street. And she finds herself thinking, I wonder if Charlotte is out today selling. So that thought crossed her mind. That's a yellow zone thought. What she should have done was push it down, back into the green zone. Why did I quit doing drugs? What are the advantages? What's the cost of that first, hit? And to be aware that sometimes you can't trust your own mind. You'll hear stories if you're in 12-step recovery. It's a beautiful little thing. The one side of my brain manufactures nonsense, and the other side is willing to buy it. That's the orange zone. What you might tell yourself, and it can be very seductive. The addict in us, in you and me and anyone, will whisper things like, You've done fine. You've had a week without it. One little one's not going to hurt. I'll tell you a very common one I have with smokers. I got no other addiction. I don't drink too much. I don't gamble. I don't, play around with the opposite gender. My one little vice. And that thought hijacks you. And that's the orange zone. Constant vigilance being the price of freedom, to be aware in the orange zone of what you're thinking, what you're telling yourself. And you've got to train yourself to understand that what you tell yourself, may not be in your best interest. I had somebody say once, I thought it was very wise. He said, my mind is like a bad neighborhood. You don't want to go in there alone. And sometimes the best orange zone counter is to call somebody, to connect with somebody. Whether you talk about what you're facing or just, say hi, to get yourself out of your own head, back into the green zone, because the green zone is where you want to be. Let's face it, the recovery rates in various addictions can be really kind of challenging. And here's where you don't want to be. You don't want to go from the orange zone into the red zone, because the red zone is when you've relapsed, when you've slipped. The red zone is not the place to fight this battle. Once you're in the red zone, if you are in the throes of a habit, if you're a slave to some habit, the red zone is the most difficult place. The time to stop, say for somebody who has a drinking problem, to not drink, you certainly shouldn't have been in the yellow zone to be in the bar in the first place, telling yourself that you could just play pool with some friends. You shouldn't have told yourself that. When the thought crossed your mind that I used to drink hard whiskey, what's a little light beer going to hurt? You should have left. But the time to stop, say with the alcohol, is not when you've got a drink in your hand or in your mouth. That's not the place to address it. The time to stop, to not smoke, is not when you bought a pack. You're in the red zone. It's certainly not when you've got a cigarette in your mouth. Now you've had to tell yourself something to get to the red zone. You had to tell yourself, I can always stop tomorrow, or it's my only vice, or I'll just cut down, or I'll switch to lights, which by the way are worse for you than the regulars. That's a whole other topic. You've told yourself something. Now you're in the red zone. This is not the place to stop. But what happens when you have stopped? Stopped. What do you do if you've relapsed? And this is what I call the purple zone. And the purple zone is what separates the winners from those who stay stuck in their addiction. The purple zone is, what do you do after you have relapsed? If it's a habit that has a real grip, what people call an addiction, like smoking cigarettes, alcohol to alcoholics, opiates, the crack cocaines of the world, the cocaines generally, sex addiction, gambling addiction, food addiction, overeating. If it's one of these that really has you in the grip, you are literally fighting for your life. And people can stay in the purple zone for years, absolutely for years, or they can get out of it like that. And by watching this and thinking about this, I'm hoping that whatever brought you to watch this video up to this point is important enough that if you are in the purple zone, if you said you weren't going to, and then you did, and you kept doing it, because these habits, for most people, are stuck in a habit like this, like say cigarettes. There's no such thing as one. It's the first one that rekindles the habit. And once you understand that about yourself, you got a fighting chance. But the fight in the purple zone is to get out of it back into the green. And sometimes the only way out is to go through. Sometimes the only way to get out of a problem like this is to suffer. And to suffer to the point where you just can't do it anymore. You know, you'll hear people over and over when they recover from something say, I just couldn't do it anymore. And so to get there quicker, aware what we're talking about, tell yourself the truth. You know, left side offers, nonsense. Other side buys it. Don't listen to the nonsense you may be spewing. If you've watched this far, I'm guessing you made a decision to do something important to you. Maybe it's quitting smoking. Maybe it's getting rid of alcohol from your life. Maybe it's not going to the casino. Maybe it's even something as simple as not yelling at your kids anymore. But whatever it is that you've said at one point in time, that's your truth. You declared, I don't want to do this anymore. So as you watch this now, or as you think about these different colors and these different zones, tell yourself, I just don't want to do it anymore. My most efficient purple zone story is a guide I've been working with, and he had 6 months or so free of alcohol. He was feeling great. Now, he liked to play pool with his buddies. One of them called. Yellow zone, right? Old friend. Sometimes you have to get rid of your old friends if you want to get a new friend to yourself. And he thought, well, I'll go. So I went to his favorite bar, played pool, big yellow zone, big yellow zone. And then he gets an orange zone thought. Like I said, he was a whiskey drinker. How can a beer hurt? Especially a light beer. Can't hurt, right? Left side, right side, telling different stories, buying the nonsense. And so he picked up, and he woke up the next morning. It was a Sunday. He woke up the next morning, hangover, feeling like crap. And his time in the purple zone was one day. And that night he was doing the AA thing. He called his AA sponsor, got back into sobriety, told himself and others the truth. And this was about 6-7 years ago. And he's still doing fine now. He stayed in the place you want to be, the green zone. So if you come this far in this little video, and you come this far in your life, I don't know where you are right now. You're either in the green zone, you're doing well, whatever it was that brought you to me or to recovery. You're in the green zone. But perhaps you are in the purple zone. And to get yourself back into the green zone requires action. It usually requires doing something. Some of it's mental, telling yourself the truth. Some of it might be telling somebody else the truth. And it might be getting support. Maybe you have a counselor, maybe you have family members who are concerned about you. Maybe you are in one of the many 12-step recovery programs. You get back and you take action. Because whatever brought you to this point, when you first started this journey of recovery, was important enough to you to take an effort. Constant vigilance is the price of recovery. And recovery is action. It's not simple. You don't usually think yourself into recovery. You act yourself. Maybe you fake it until you make it. And by the way, that is a fine way to be in the green zone. Also, if we work together, I'll talk to you about the idea of a day at a time. You do it a day at a time. All you have to do for today to be a good green zone day is get through the rest of today without whatever was problematic for you in your life, and whatever else happens, I would say, is a good day. And good day to you. John Koenig. hypnotist, Providence, Rhode Island. Take care.